Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're not just throwing isolated health tips at you. Oh no. We're going to decode the invisible, hidden operating system that's literally governing your daily habits, your energy, your sleep, and your stress. We're acting as a documentary intelligence engine, revealing the profound biological forces shaping your life, often completely under the radar. We need to start treating every symptom you experience as a critical clue, and every habit as a signal that's just waiting to be decoded.
So let's kick things off with a massive mystery, one that honestly plagues millions of us. Why on earth do you suddenly wake up at 3 a.m., completely out of nowhere, with a racing heart? Maybe you're covered in sweat, feeling this intense surge of anxiety. Well, most of us just write this off as a bad night's sleep, right? We think, oh, I need a better pillow, or I should turn down the AC, or maybe I need a sleep supplement. But what if I told you that this 3 a.m. wake-up isn't actually a sleep issue at all? Nope, it is a metabolic alarm. Your body is forcefully waking you up on purpose because it genuinely thinks you're in danger.
The hidden mechanism behind that terrifying alarm is something called reactive hypoglycemia. Basically, this happens when you experience a rapid, highly symptomatic drop in your blood sugar, usually about 2 to 4 hours after you eat. See, when your blood sugar plummets overnight, your brain, which absolutely relies on a steady, constant stream of glucose just to survive, experiences a localized energy crisis. It literally panics. It has no idea you're just tucked in, safely sleeping in your bed. As far as your brain is concerned, you are starving and actively failing to survive tonight.
Let's walk through exactly how this happens. Say, around 8 p.m., you have a heavy, high-carb dinner or maybe a sugary late-night snack. Your blood sugar spikes. Then, by 11 p.m., right as you're drifting off to sleep, your pancreas mounts this massive insulin overshoot just to clear all that excess glucose. Fast forward to 2 a.m., and that huge surge of insulin has caused your blood sugar to absolutely crash, way below your normal physiological threshold. Now, to save your brain from this energy crisis, your body triggers a massive counter-regulatory response. By 3 a.m., your adrenal glands are flooding your bloodstream with adrenaline and cortisol, desperately trying to force your liver to release emergency glucose. And you guessed it, that sudden, massive flood of stress hormones is exactly what snaps your eyes wide open, makes your heart pound out of your chest, and leaves you staring at the ceiling, wide awake. Now, this whole mechanism is deeply interconnected with our hormones, meaning certain people are hit much harder by this. Women between the ages of 40 and 50 are especially vulnerable to this exact 3 a.m. adrenaline surge. Why is that? Well, shifting estrogen and progesterone levels during perimenopause directly alter your insulin sensitivity. On top of that, perimenopause increases cortisol variability, and natural age-related declines in muscle mass actually reduce your body's overall capacity to store glucose. Sleep naturally becomes a bit lighter too. So you see, biology influences hormones, and hormones influence sleep. The symptom you feel is the sudden wake-up, but the root cause? It's actually metabolic vulnerability.
Part 1. Your invisible circadian clocks.
We've just looked at the timeline of a single night, but let's zoom out. What actually governs this entire biological dance? Well, it turns out we have two totally distinct yet interconnected timekeeping systems running our biology. First, you've got a central master clock located right in your brain, and this one is primarily guided by light and dark. When the sun goes down, it releases melatonin to prep you for rest. Simple enough, right? But you also have peripheral clocks. These are located in virtually every organ and tissue in your body. Your liver, your gut, your fat cells, you name it. And here's the crazy part. These peripheral clocks couldn't care less about the sun. They are heavily guided by when you eat.
So what happens when these two systems fall completely out of sync? Researchers actually call this eating jet lag. If you consume food late at night, your brain's master clock is up there screaming, "Hey, it's dark! Release the melatonin, shut down digestion, and prep for deep sleep." But the food hitting your stomach is telling the peripheral clocks in your gut and liver, "Whoa, calories are coming in! Wake up, secrete insulin, start metabolizing." You're creating this intense state of internal dyssynchrony. You are literally tearing your biology in two totally different directions, which severely disrupts your body's ability to process energy and properly rest.
And listen, this isn't just some clever metaphor. Let's look at the actual clinical data. 0.97. Researchers found that simply delaying meals by 5 hours physically shifted the expression of a specific clock gene, the PER2 gene in our white fat tissue, by 0.97 hours. That is nearly a full hour. The brain's master clock didn't budge, but the organ clocks absolutely did. This completely proves that through our daily habits, we can manually misalign our own biology right down to the genetic level. Isn't that wild?
Part 2. The gut-brain highway. Let's dive in.
Let's talk about the vagus nerve. This is the longest cranial nerve in your body, and it acts as the primary physical conduit of the gut-brain axis. Most of us just assume the brain sits up there barking orders down at the stomach, right? But look at how the fibers are actually split. A whopping 80% of them are sensory. That means they are actively listening to the gut and reporting back up to the brain. Only 20% are motor fibers taking commands down. Your gut is constantly feeding critical intelligence up to your brain about inflammation levels, nutrient status, and the overall state of your microbiome. This incredibly busy highway dictates exactly how you process food, and it's all governed by your autonomic nervous system. When you're stressed out, you enter a sympathetic state, classic fight or flight. Cortisol is pumping, and your biology basically decides that digesting your lunch is definitely not a priority if you're, say, running from a tiger. Digestion is literally paralyzed, gastric emptying slows right down. But when you feel safe, you enter a parasympathetic state, rest and digest. This is when the vagus nerve is highly active and your digestion is completely optimized.
The problem is, when we live in a state of chronic stress, we develop what's called low vagal tone. That critical communication highway basically breaks down. And what does that look like? Well, you get those 3 a.m. wake-ups with a racing heart, chronic bloating or nausea, heightened anxiety, a total loss of morning appetite, and just poor stress resilience in general. On the surface, these seem like completely unrelated issues, right? A sleep problem, a stomach problem, a mood problem. But if we treat them as clues, they reveal the exact same underlying mechanism, an overwhelmed sympathetic nervous system that's paralyzing the gut and causing a major breakdown in vagal communication.
Part 3. The cortisol craving loop.
So this biological misalignment doesn't just mess with your sleep or your stomach, it reaches right into our minds and literally hijacks our behavior the very next day. To really understand how this happens, we have to look at the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal chain. Think of this as a 200,000-year-old piece of survival hardware. The exact moment your brain perceives a threat, whether that's a literal predator in the wild or honestly just a passive-aggressive email from your boss, this axis activates, flooding your bloodstream with cortisol to help you survive.
Meaning when you find yourself standing in front of the fridge at 9 p.m., digging into a pint of ice cream, it is absolutely not a lack of willpower. It is not some character flaw. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, and that cortisol literally alters your appetite hormones to demand sugary, fatty foods. Your 200,000-year-old operating system honestly thinks you are entering a harsh, stressful winter, and it is chemically forcing you to store fast energy to survive the impending crisis.
And this creates the ultimate biochemical trap. Here's how it plays out. Step 1. Chronic stress elevates your cortisol. Step 2. That cortisol triggers intense cravings for sugar and fat. Step 3. You eat the comfort food, which stimulates a massive hit of dopamine in the brain's reward center. And step 4. This is the hidden consequence most people never see. That dopamine hit actually temporarily suppresses the HPA stress axis. Eating that junk food literally turns off the stress alarm for a few blissful minutes. So what happens? Your brain logs this as a highly successful survival strategy, wiring you to repeat the exact same loop the next time you feel stressed.
Part 4. Rewiring your operating system.
We know biology influences behavior, but the good news is we are definitely not powerless here. So, the million-dollar question: how do we manually override a survival loop that has been hardwired into us for 200 millennia? How do we restore our biological rhythm? The answer actually lies in using mindfulness, but not just as some vague spiritual buzzword. We're talking about using it as a literal, mechanical, neurological lever to flip the switch in our nervous system.
The very first tool is the STOP, biological override, designed to break that automatic craving loop. Before you eat, you stop. Literally step away from the kitchen for just 2 minutes to break the automatic routine. Then T, take a breath. As we'll see in a second, this is a profound biological trigger for calm. O, observe. Where do you actually feel the hunger? Is it physical emptiness in your stomach, or is it emotional tension tight in your chest? And finally, P, proceed with intention. Doing this creates a crucial gap between the stress trigger and your biological response.
Next up, we can actually manually stimulate the vagus nerve to get those peripheral clocks synchronized again. By inhaling for 4 seconds and exhaling for 8, that long exhale physically activates your parasympathetic state. Chewing your food 20 to 30 times, that's a mechanical action sending safety signals via the vagus nerve straight to your brain. Eliminating screen distractions while you eat actually helps your brain properly register satiety, and restricting your eating to a 10-hour daytime window. That ensures your peripheral clocks align perfectly with your brain's master clock.
I really want to emphasize this.
Taking a deep breath before a meal isn't just some nice, fluffy trick for relaxation. It is a powerful physiological, mechanical lever. It initiates what's known as the vagovagal reflex. It physically shifts your autonomic nervous system completely out of fight or flight. It turns down systemic inflammation, and it physically turns on the digestive enzymes in your gut. By doing this, you are manually switching the tracks of your own biology.
By understanding these hidden connections between your circadian clocks, your gut-brain highway, and your stress hormones, you are no longer just a helpless passenger to your cravings or those terrible 3 a.m. wake-ups. You are the architect of your own rhythm. By tuning into these signals, you hold the power to rewire your entire operating system, heal your gut, and finally reclaim your sleep. The manual to your biology is finally in your hands. The only question left is, now that you truly know how the machine works, how are you going to choose to run it?